People think the cruelest wounds come from strangers. They don't. Sometimes, the deepest pain comes from the people who... At first, Helena called Emily sweetheart. At first, she hugged her. At first, But Helena made one mistake. She believed fear would keep Emily silent forever. She believed lies would protect her forever. She was wrong. I heard everything.
What is this?
Marcus, tell me! How could you? No, this is impossible!
Before Helena came into their lives, Emily's world was not perfect, but it was still warm. It was still hers. She had lost her mother when she was young, and that loss had left a kind of quiet inside her that never really went away. She still remembered her mother's hands brushing her hair back from her face. She still remembered the smell of lavender in the hallway. She still remembered the soft voice that used to tell her, no matter how hard life gets, don't let it make you cruel. After her mother died, the house became quieter. Her father, Marcus, changed too. He still loved Emily, she knew that, but grief had made him more distant, more tired, more focused on surviving than noticing. He buried himself in work because work gave him structure, and structure was easier than sorrow. So while Emily learned how to live with the absence of her mother, Marcus learned how to live with distraction. Years passed like that. A quiet daughter, a tired father, a home held together by memory. And then one day, Marcus met Helena. Helena was elegant, charming, polished. She knew how to speak gently. She knew how to laugh at the right moment. She knew exactly how to make a lonely man feel seen. Marcus, who had spent years carrying grief like a stone inside his chest, looked at Helena and thought maybe life was giving him another chance. And Emily? Emily wanted to be happy for him. She really did. Because when you love someone, you want them to smile again, even if you don't yet realize how expensive that smile is going to become. At the beginning, Helena was careful. She brought flowers into the house. She complimented Emily's clothes. She told neighbors, "She's such a lovely girl." She kissed Marcus on the cheek, held his arm, and made everything look peaceful. Her daughter Chloe came with her, beautiful, stylish, confident, and used to getting attention without asking for it. Chloe wasn't openly cruel at first. She was just dismissive. The kind of girl who could make someone feel small without raising her voice. Still, Emily told herself to adjust, to be patient, to be mature. Because maybe blending families was hard in the beginning. Maybe awkwardness was normal. Maybe the tension she felt was temporary. But there are some instincts the heart recognizes before the mind does. And somewhere deep inside, Emily already knew. Something about Helena's kindness felt rehearsed. Something about her smile never reached her eyes. And something about the way Chloe looked around the house felt less like a rival and more like possession. Slightly fast pacing. Keep pauses extremely short and flow continuously with a gripping storytelling tone. Marcus' heart was not a monster. That was part of the tragedy. If he had been cruel, Emily might have stopped needing him sooner. But he was not cruel. He was blind. And blindness inside a family can be just as destructive as malice. Marcus loved the version of home he thought he had built. After years of grief, he wanted peace so badly that he mistook quiet for happiness. He saw Helena's elegance and assumed maturity. He saw Emily's silence and assumed stability. He saw Chloe's confidence and assumed normal teenage attitude. He saw the table set, the laundry done, the meals prepared, the house spotless. And he thanked Helena for bringing order back into their lives. He never asked who was paying the price for that order. Sometimes Emily stood in the doorway and stared at her father, wondering how someone who had held her as a child, who had once wiped tears from her face, could now fail to notice that she looked tired all the time, that she spoke less, that she smiled less, that she had stopped talking about her future altogether. But this is the cruel magic of manipulation. Abusers don't only control their victims, they control the story. Helena had already built one. Emily was sensitive. Emily was still processing loss. Emily was easily overwhelmed. Emily was not ready for responsibility. And because Marcus trusted his wife, he absorbed that story a little more each day, until it became easier for him to believe Helena's interpretation of Emily than Emily's own reality. That is how betrayal often works in families. Not with one dramatic moment, but with repeated moments of choosing the easier explanation. The more Emily suffered, the less believable she felt. Her eyes looked tired. Helena said she stayed up too late. Her mood was heavy. Helena said she was dramatic. Her silence grew deeper. Helena said she was difficult. And eventually, Emily began doubting even herself. Maybe she should have fought louder. Maybe she should have gathered proof sooner. Maybe she was weak. Maybe there really was something wrong with her. That is what emotional abuse does. It doesn't just hurt you. It rearranges your relationship with your own mind. Only at night, when the house was asleep, did Emily feel honest again. She would sit on the floor beside the old box where she kept her mother's photographs and letters. She would run her thumb across the edges of those pictures and whisper things she could tell no one else. "I'm trying. I don't know what to do. I miss you." Sometimes she imagined what her mother would say if she could see the life Emily was living now. And every time she thought of that, she broke a little more. Because the truth was unbearable. The one person who would have protected her was gone. And the one person still alive who should have protected her wasn't looking. Chapter 5. The Day Hope Burned. The breaking point did not come with a slap. It came with paper. Mrs. Ruiz, one of Emily's old teachers, had always believed in her. She remembered Emily as bright, focused, and full of promise. When Emily quietly reached out to her after months of isolation, Mrs. Ruiz helped arrange another scholarship appointment. It wasn't everything Emily had lost, but it was a chance. A small, trembling chance. That morning, Emily woke before dawn and got ready in silence. She wore the simplest, clean clothes she had. She gathered her documents carefully. Her transcript, copies of identification, recommendation letters, notes, deadlines. Hope, folded neatly into a thin file. Her heart was pounding, but for the first time in a long time, it was not pounding from fear. It was pounding from possibility. Then, Helena walked into the kitchen. "Where are you going?" she asked. Emily answered truthfully. She had stopped trying to invent excuses. "I have an appointment. Mrs. Ruiz is picking me up." Helena stared at her for one long second. Then she said, "No, you don't." Emily felt that old coldness creep over her skin. "Yes, I do," she said softly. "Dad knows I've been trying to apply again." Helena's expression didn't change. "Then go," she said. For a moment, Emily thought maybe she had won some small miracle. Maybe Helena had given up. Maybe the morning would survive. Then, Emily opened her folder. It was empty. Every document was gone. The air left her lungs. She searched the counter, the table, her bag, the chair, the drawers around her as panic climbed into her throat. And then, Chloe appeared at the doorway, holding the missing folder in one hand, looking almost amused. "Looking for this?" she asked. Emily rushed toward her. "Give it back." Chloe pulled it away slightly. Maybe if you ask properly. Please, Emily said, humiliated and desperate. Please give it to me. Something flickered in Chloe's face. Not kindness, not yet. Maybe discomfort. But before that feeling could grow, Helena extended her hand. Chloe gave the folder to her mother. And then, without even changing expression, Helena walked to the fireplace. Emily understood too late. No, she whispered. Helena opened the grate. No, Emily said again, louder now, moving forward. And then Helena dropped the papers into the fire. Flames climbed instantly. White edges curled black. Ink disappeared. Official seals warped. Signatures vanished. A future burned in seconds. Emily screamed and lunged toward the fireplace, but Helena shoved her back with enough force to send her stumbling against the wall. You are not leaving this house until I say so, Helena said. Emily fell to her knees. She watched years of effort turn into ash. Not just forms, not just transcripts. Proof that she had tried. Proof that she had plans. Proof that she was more than what Helena kept calling her. And as the papers burned, something else burned with them. The last fragile part of Emily that still believed Helena might stop before total destruction. Because now she understood. This woman would ruin her future without regret. Would watch her cry without remorse. Would stand over her pain and feel powerful. And when Emily lifted her head through tears, she saw something unexpected. Chloe was no longer smiling. For the first time, Chloe looked disturbed, as if even she had not realized how far her mother was willing to go. That morning, hope turned to ash. But in the ruins of that moment, the first crack appeared. The change did not happen all at once. That was what made it so dangerous. If Helena had been cruel from the very first day, Marcus might have seen it. If Chloe had insulted Emily openly in front of her father, maybe questions would have been asked. But real manipulation rarely begins with screams. It begins with small things, tiny humiliations, soft commands spoken in a sweet voice. Can you wash these dishes, sweetheart? Can you fold Chloe's laundry? Can you wipe the counters again? I noticed a mark. At first, Emily didn't think much of it. Then the requests became expectations. The expectations became rules, and the rules became chains. Within weeks, Emily was waking before sunrise to clean parts of the house Helena claimed were still dusty. She was preparing breakfast, ironing clothes, scrubbing floors, carrying grocery bags, organizing closets, polishing mirrors, and doing all the invisible work that no one notices until it stops being done. If Marcus was home, Helena acted affectionate. If Marcus was gone, Helena's voice changed. It lost all softness. It became sharp, cold, precise. The first time Emily truly understood what Helena was, they were standing alone in the kitchen. Marcus had just left for work. The front door had barely shut when Helena turned toward Emily and said, in a voice stripped of all pretense, "From now on, when I tell you to do something, you do it the first time." Emily blinked, thinking she had misunderstood. But Helena stepped closer and said, "Don't confuse kindness with weakness. This house will run my way." There was no smile on her face then, no warmth, no performance, only control. Emily was stunned. She tried to tell herself Helena was stressed, maybe adjusting, maybe overwhelmed. But the days that followed removed all doubt. Nothing Emily did was ever enough. If the tea was too hot, Helena complained. If it was too cold, Helena complained. If Chloe lost something, Emily was blamed. If guests were coming over, Emily worked twice as hard so Helena could take credit for a perfect home. Every time Marcus came back, everything looked calm. The table was set. The lights were warm. Helena smiled. Emily stayed quiet. And slowly, a terrible pattern formed. Helena would wound. Marcus would arrive. Helena would pretend. And Emily, exhausted and emotionally cornered, would say nothing, because by then she had already learned the first rule of surviving cruel people. If no one is willing to believe you, your pain only makes you look guilty. Chapter 3. From Daughter to Servant. There is a special kind of heartbreak in being mistreated inside your own home. Not because it is physically painful, but because home is supposed to be the place where you remove your armor. Instead, Emily began putting armor on every morning. She measured her footsteps. She lowered her voice. She learned how to read Helena's mood from the sound of a cabinet door closing. She learned what kind of silence meant danger. She learned when Chloe was bored, because boredom made her mean. And worst of all, she learned how easy it is for a person to disappear while still being seen every day. Chloe began treating Emily less like a stepsister and more like household staff. Steam this. Bring me water. Clean my mirror. Why are my shoes still by the door? Sometimes Chloe's cruelty was playful, almost casual, which made it worse. It meant Emily's suffering was not even dramatic enough to deserve hatred. It was just convenient. And Helena encouraged it. Not always directly, sometimes with a glance, sometimes with silence, sometimes with the approving stillness of a mother watching her daughter absorb her values perfectly. Emily tried to hold on to parts of herself. She kept reading at night when everyone slept. She kept a small notebook under her mattress where she wrote down scholarship deadlines, college plans, and thoughts she could never say out loud. She still dreamed of going to university. She wanted independence. She wanted peace. She wanted one life decision that belonged only to her. But Helena seemed to sense that hope was Emily's last untouched possession. And so, slowly, she began attacking that too. If Emily had an interview, Helena suddenly needed the entire pantry reorganized. If Emily had study time, Chloe complained that her room needed help. If Emily mentioned college, Helena would sigh dramatically and say, "Marcus, I worry Emily isn't emotionally ready for all that pressure." Marcus, tired and trusting, would nod thoughtfully instead of asking harder questions. And every time he did, Emily felt something inside her sink a little deeper. Because disappointment is painful, but being misunderstood by the one person who should know your heart, that does something else. That teaches loneliness. One evening, Marcus came home and asked Emily how her college interview had gone. She froze, because she had never gone. Helena had made sure of that. Before Emily could answer, Helena smiled gently and said, "She decided not to go. I think she's overwhelmed." Marcus looked disappointed, but calm. "Emily," he said, "opportunities won't wait forever." Those words pierced her. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. And because the opportunity had not passed due to laziness, irresponsibility, or fear. It had been taken from her, piece by piece, by the same woman who then stood beside her father pretending concern. That night, Emily cried into her pillow so quietly no one would hear her. And in the darkness, she understood something she had been avoiding for months. Helena did not just want control. She wanted ownership. She wanted Emily small, dependent, invisible, and grateful for scraps. She wanted to turn a daughter into a servant, and then convince the world she had chosen that role herself. Once lies are exposed, they stop sounding clever. They just sound ugly. Helena tried one final time to regain control. "She turned Chloe against me," she said. "This is manipulation." But even Chloe flinched at that. "No," Chloe said quietly. "This is consequence." Marcus left the table and walked into the study. When he returned, he was holding more documents. His face had gone cold in a way Emily had never seen before. "I spoke to Mr. Carter before I came home," he said. "He's been trying to contact me for months about irregularities in the trust." Helena's face lost color. Marcus kept staring at her. "You told me he was a scammer," he said. Helena said nothing. "How long?" Marcus asked. No answer. His voice broke as he repeated it. "How long have you been doing this to my daughter?" This time Helena exploded. "Don't act innocent," she hissed. "You were never here. You wanted a peaceful house, so I gave you one." The sentence struck everyone at the table, because it was monstrous, and because, in part, it was true. Marcus had not caused the cruelty, but his absence had created the perfect place for it to thrive. He closed his eyes for a moment, like a man realizing too late that he had slept through a fire in his own home. Then he looked at Helena and said the words that ended everything. "Pack your things." Helena stared at him. "What?" "You're leaving tonight." She looked at Chloe. "Get your bag." Chloe didn't move. Helena's voice hardened. "Chloe." But Chloe stepped backward. "I'm not going with you." It was the first time she had ever openly rejected her mother. And somehow, that hurt Helena more than being exposed. For one final second she looked around the room, expecting someone to bend, someone to weaken, someone to rescue her from consequence. No one did. Emily stood still, exhausted beyond triumph. Marcus looked devastated. Chloe looked shaken but certain. And Helena, for the first time since entering that house, had no control over the story. She left with rage in her eyes and poison in her silence. The front door closed behind her, and the sound echoed like the end of a long nightmare. People imagine justice feels like joy. Usually, it doesn't. Usually, it feels like exhaustion. After Helena left, the house was quiet in a different way. Not tense, not suffocating, just empty. Marcus sat in the living room like a man who no longer trusted his own memory. Emily stood by the window, unable to decide whether to cry, collapse, or simply disappear into sleep for a week. Chloe hovered near the hallway, looking like someone who no longer knew where she belonged. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Emily," he said, voice barely holding together. "I don't know if I deserve to ask this, but can you tell me how bad it was?" That question shattered something in her. Not because she didn't want to answer, but because she had needed him to ask it so much sooner. And now that he finally had, the truth hurt too much to carry alone. "She took my money," Emily said. "She burned my scholarship papers. She made me clean the whole house, do Chloe's laundry, miss interviews, miss deadlines." Her voice cracked. "She told me no one would believe me." Marcus covered his face and wept, not politely, not quietly. The kind of crying that comes when a person realizes the worst thing they ever did was not what they said, but what they failed to see. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked through tears, and the moment he said it, he knew how unfair it sounded. Emily gave a broken laugh that cut through the room like glass. "I did," she said, "just not in words you were willing to hear." Marcus folded inward. There was no defense for that, no explanation big enough, just guilt. Then Chloe spoke. "I failed you too." Emily looked at her. Chloe's eyes were red. "I can't undo what I did. But I'll tell the lawyer everything. I'll testify. I'll tell them about the papers, the recording, all of it." Emily didn't forgive her. Not then. Some damage cannot be healed by one brave act at the end. But she nodded. And sometimes a nod is not forgiveness. Sometimes it is simply permission for truth to continue. The next day, Marcus and Emily met with Mr. Carter, the attorney handling the estate. The legal process would take time, he explained, but Helena's transfers could be challenged. The trust could be restored. The attempted property changes could be blocked. For the first time in what felt like years, Emily heard words that pointed forward instead of backward. Then Mr. Carter paused and reached into a file. "There is something else," he said. He handed Emily a sealed letter. On the front, in familiar handwriting, was her name. Emily's fingers trembled before she even opened it. It was from her mother, written years earlier to be delivered if certain legal conditions were ever triggered. Emily unfolded the page and began to read. And as she read, it felt as though a hand long gone had reached across time to hold her face gently one more time. "My darling Emily, if you are reading this, then life has tested you more than I ever wanted it to. I wish I could stand beside you. I wish I could protect you myself. But if I cannot, then let these words do what my arms no longer can. Do not let anyone convince you that your silence is peace. Do not let anyone make you feel grateful for surviving what should never have happened to you. What belongs to you is not only money, home, or security. What belongs to you is your dignity, your voice, and your future. And no one can truly take those from you unless you surrender them. If you are hurting, I need you to remember this. Being kind does not mean being powerless. Being gentle does not mean being weak. And enduring pain does not mean you deserved it. One day, truth will ask you to stand up for yourself. When that day comes, do not be afraid of your own voice. I have always loved you. Mom." By the time Emily reached the end, she was crying openly. Not the hopeless tears she had cried in her room at night. Different tears. The kind that come when pain is finally met by truth. When love arrives, even late, and reminds you who you were before fear rewrote your reflection. Marcus sat beside her in silence, crying too. He did not try to interrupt the moment with promises, but eventually he said the only honest thing he could. "I cannot undo what I allowed," he said, "but I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." Emily looked at him, and for the first time in a very long time, she did not see only the father who had failed her. She also saw the man who finally understood that love without attention is fragile, and that family without truth is dangerous. Healing would not be immediate. Trust would not magically return. But the door to healing had opened, and that mattered. Helena believed power came from fear. She believed control came from silence. She believed that if she broke Emily slowly enough, quietly enough, cleverly enough, no one would ever put the pieces together. She believed that a young girl with no mother, a distracted father, and a house full of lies would remain powerless forever. But she forgot something important. Truth can be delayed. It can be buried. It can be mocked. It can even be doubted for a while. But truth has a way of surviving. And when it finally rises, it does not ask permission. Emily had been treated like a servant in her own home. Her dreams had been burned. Her inheritance had been stolen. Her pain had been dismissed. Her voice had been buried under someone else's version of the story. But in the end, one secret recording was enough to crack the mask. One moment of courage was enough to change the room. One truth was enough to destroy a lie that had ruled for years. And maybe that is the part people need to remember most. Not every victim is loud. Not every wound is visible. Not every cruel person looks cruel in public. Sometimes evil wears perfume. Sometimes it sets the dinner table. Sometimes it calls itself family. But no lie, no matter how polished, survives forever. And no one who steals another person's future gets to call that love. Emily lost years. She lost innocence. She lost trust. But she did not lose herself. And in the end, that was the one thing Helena could never steal.